So over the last couple years, the issue of pursuing a four-year degree has increasingly become part of the conversation we've had at CCA. It's become part of the conversations I've had with families in my orbit, people in our homeschool community, people in our churches. This is a hot topic. I'm the product of a public elementary and secondary system in Chicago and a public university system in Illinois. I come from a long line of educators and consider myself essentially an educator, teacher, but increasingly in my own reflection, I am reevaluating the college experience for my family. Full transparency, I have long believed that the worst ideas that I have held have been the direct result of my college education. So I'm not naive. However, I have still generally considered college as necessary and redeemable. I want to make this clear too, that at CCA, we believe that education is an end in itself, not a means to an end. So how someone, leverages their education as they leave our program, we support that. So we generally believe that education is an end in itself, not a means to an end. However, most of the people that are in CCA are probably thinking of college, I would hazard a guess. Also, I'm in no way with this trying to discourage people who are enthusiastic and suitably college bound. I'm merely just opening up the conversation for us to have about the current state of affairs. So let me just have a few slides here. So this slide just shows us general inflation with the cost of college tuition. And we see that in college tuition inflation far exceeds general inflation. I mean, we are talking by magnitude. It looks like, over 1,300% versus about, 275% increase over the same period of time. And we all know that family incomes have not kept up with this at all. So this is just basically saying what I sort of said, that in general, people are college bound after high school. That is true in the general population. It's probably a little more true in the homeschool population. 74% of our students go on to attend college. The average annual in-state tuition for a four-year degree is roughly about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. That's just the tuition. Out of state, as you see, it's in the 28 to 30, and a private college is closer to 40. Those are the per year tuition. That's just tuition. For a private university, the room and board typically averages about another $14,000. Public university, another $12,000. So again, we're well into $25,000, $26,000 at the low end at this point. Also, the typical financial aid is about $9,000. Couldn't find really much on private school, but I would hazard a guess maybe it's double. But you still see a gap that either the parent or the student's going to have to make up, and we're talking in the thousands or tens of thousands a year. Also, these are, again, other statistics that I found that, public four-year university, the student's going to leave with approximately $27,000 in debt. Private university, more, in the 33,000 range. So school is, becoming out of reach for a lot of people. In 1987, I worked at Boston College. I didn't attend Boston College. I should have. I was sort of not very academically focused at the point, but I worked there. And that was a elite private Catholic university, probably one of the more expensive universities in the country at that point, not the most expensive. And it was $20,000 a year in 1987. I would hazard to guess it's well over 100,000 to go to Boston College today. So this slide just shows you that the unemployment rate, so the advantage that the college grad has in the unemployment rate is not that significant. It's going up, but also the gap is closing between the college grad and the non-college grad. Just, we're sort of guessing at this point, beyond where this graph goes, but there's a lot of uncertainty now with AI, especially for, white collar positions. And so I would think that this gap starts to narrow. I pulled this statistic just because it tells us what a college grad's expecting to earn in their early years versus what a high schooler just with a high school diploma. Now, what this graph doesn't consider is that the sunk college costs that the degreed student incurred that the non-degreed student did not incur. This does not consider any college debt that the degreed student is required to pay back. And most of the non-degreed students are in this statistic, I believe, are workers, laborers, some are unskilled. That's probably not the same constituency at CCA or generally what we're going to see in homeschool. Also, degreed students certainly advance in their careers, and depending on their degree and their career choice, their salary is going to increase, but it's likely limited at some point. There's likely a point at which they've made as much as they're going to make. When you think of entrepreneurs, income is unlimited, and that's something that I don't know if we fully appreciate. Before we get to the panel, I just want to make a couple observations about the reality. So there are risks that I think we can all agree exist. There's ideological risk. The university continues to be the locus or incubator for much of the divisive ideology that has been wrought on our society. Universities have become very illiberal, intolerant, and groupthink. We watch as the elite schools in this country produce activists rather than statesmen, civic leaders, or businessmen. There's financial risk. We sort of already showed you that first graph where it showed you, 1,200% increase in college tuition since 1980 versus general inflation at about, 275 versus we know incomes have not gone up near that. So there's a financial risk. Obviously, our incomes have not kept up with that. And so the result is either the parent or the student is going to have a lot of money going in or going to take on debt. And the truth is no one really disputes that. No one disputes this idea that the trajectory we're on, that graph I showed at the beginning, that's unsustainable. No one really disputes that, but no one's doing anything about it either. Job security, we sort of showed you that toward those last few slides. College used to all but guarantee an entry-level opportunity in a secure career. However, for many reasons, that is not the case anymore. Some of this is anecdotal, but we've all heard those cases where 300 applicants are applying for one position, or the applicant coming out of college who's sent out dozens and dozens and dozens of resumes and is yet to have a callback. Those are anecdotal, but I'm sure there's data that backs that up. Also, AI, again, is the wild card here. We know that robots, probably are going to be, part of our manufacturing, but AI is increasingly going to be threatening the white collar workforce. So there's a few assumptions I think we've made as educators. I don't know when this happened, but at some point in the last 30 or 40 years, we decided that, we should make college available to everybody who wants to go. And there was, I think, very much a push for people to go to college. I think it created sort of the educational industrial complex. It is no longer a competition for seats. Rather, colleges are just planning expansion and just concerning themselves with capturing a market. So there's really no more competition for seats, I don't think. The college is taking anybody they can. Societies are best served by more degreed individuals. I think we believe that. I think we've undervalued the innovation and the character and discipline of entrepreneurs. Colleges, we used to believe that colleges will create a cohesive social program. And that's probably true, but I think we've realized it's created a very negative one in our case. So those are the things I guess I want to set this up at before I introduce the panel. But we have a very knowledgeable and diverse panel of experts this evening, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But each one will explain how they are developing students to be productive out of the gate, but also how the student can recognize all the options they have to leverage their education toward a meaningful and fulfilling, continuing, their journey after high school. So panelists, I'm going to give you a time, and Ryan will go. Ryan, Jamie, Mark, Ray. If you can introduce yourself, the organization you represent, why you do what you do, and how it can help families with graduating high schoolers. And if you could keep that to about, 3 or 4 minutes, I'd appreciate that.
All right. So my name is Ryan Peterson, and I'm a design engineer for Moldesign. And this is a company that does product development, and we build plastic injection molds. Our company was started by my dad about 40 years ago, and he got me involved when I was a teenager, and I've been doing CAD design and programming and all kinds of other things since over the years. And our business, we like to create, we like to build things and solve problems. Now, my own education was mostly private school through high school, but I didn't really go to college for my career. However, I did take some college courses just for topics that interested me. And as far as how I can assist someone coming out of high school, one thing is, we're always looking for smart, talented young people, and I will say that our particular job is quite it's a certain kind of fit. However, I would be happy to give a tour of my shop to anyone interested. Sometimes, if you've never seen a manufacturing facility, we take raw blocks of steel and make molds, and it's very precise. It's all computer driven now, high tech. And so I would be happy to show somebody the shop, and it's sometimes just seeing it can open your eyes to different possibilities that someone might like. If they've never seen it, you don't know. And so I can walk you through the process of how we create various products, all the way through from just a concept, and then all the way through to production. So anyway, that's a couple of ways that we can help.
Okay, thank you. Jamie?
Yes, sir.
Jamie,
hey, thanks, everyone. This is Jamie Davis. I am co-founder of Franchises for Fathers. The Tennessee Torment has got me this week, so I've asked my co-founder, Brett Ethridge, to do my part. So, Brett, over to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, so we operate under the sort of umbrella of franchises for fathers. And I think there are a couple elements of that. Ryan, I love what you had to say. You had a father who sort of worked with you and showed you the ropes and helped facilitate your path into business ownership. And a lot of high schoolers might want to go on that track, but may not have that path to get there. So let me sort of step back a little bit. I went the traditional college route, but I'm homeschooling my 15-year-old, and he has been telling me for years already that he doesn't want to go to college. How he got that idea in his mind from about middle school, I don't know, but you start to ask yourself the question, what then are your options? What are his options? What is my really obligation as his father to help facilitate and launch him into the world if he's not going to go to college? And I think there are a lot of families who might be experiencing something similar. And he could certainly go into the workforce, but we know in part by what Jeff shared, some of the numbers and statistics, that he'll potentially be behind a little bit in terms of hourly wage. So maybe some kids are the entrepreneurial types. They're the types who had the lemonade stands, and you might have kids like that. And you know, man, they are going to be much better off in life running the show rather than working for somebody else. And I think in the homeschool environment, we're sort of operating outside the system anyway. And our kids aren't necessarily thinking about being a cog in the wheel and just going and working for somebody else for the next 40 years of their lives. But again, what are their options? And we can certainly bootstrap our way to starting our own businesses. And maybe as fathers and mothers, we can help our kids and make connections and help them figure that out a little bit. Or what if there's a way that we can set them up for success right out of the gate? And so what we do is we help match people with franchise opportunities. Now, we do that a lot with the fathers who might want to move out of the corporate world and get into a business that gives them a little bit more time freedom and control over their income so they can be more present in the lives of their kids. That's really our heart for what we do at Franchises for Fathers. But what about the kids, the high schoolers who might want to go to a different path? And by the way, what about graduating seniors from college? And this was very much my situation. When I was in college and moving towards my senior year, all of my buddies were interviewing with the investment banks and the consulting firms or thinking of going to law school. But I very much wasn't on that path, and I went a very non-traditional route. But what about kids even graduating from college who might be better off being in business for themselves? And so again, what we do is we consult and really help match kids, adults, anybody who might be looking for an opportunity to get in business for themselves with a franchise opportunity, which sort of accelerates the game. It gives you the tailwind of having a system to tap into. Ryan, you guys have systems in your business, but you've had to figure that out and build that business and figure that out. What if a kid wants to be a plumber? Or what if a kid, there's so many different potential paths. And what if you could tap into a system that already exists that has a reasonable expectation of profitability quickly, rather than having to try and fail like so many people trying to start businesses on their own have to do? And so that's really what we would do. And I would just conclude with this final thought, thinking about the conversation, Jeff, that you were talking about. I was talking to my wife about this earlier, and she told me about a friend of hers who in college was owned, I don't know how he came into ownership of these, but owned and ran several Quiznos franchises. So we don't do a whole lot in food services, but I think when we think franchising, we think McDonald's, Subway, right? There are hundreds, thousands of franchises in all sorts of industries. But she was saying he had more money than the rest of us. He paid his way through college from the proceeds of his Quiznos businesses. So what an interesting idea as well. What if we set our high schoolers up with a business, they build it over the next several years, and then they have the proceeds and the time to do all sorts of other interesting things, including potentially actually going back to college, but not having to take on the education debt. So there's lots of really benefits, I think, to going the franchise or just business ownership route in general for high schoolers. But that's really where we come in the service we provide.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to hit on before we move on. Two themes are sort of emerging, sort of autonomy and legacy. And I mean, legacy, I'm a healthcare consultant. That's what I do most of my time. I can't hand that off to my kid. That there's no handing that off. Also, when I was in grad school, I taught freshman composition, and I had two different sections. One section were, these kids right out of high school from suburban Chicago, Chicago. All they did was party. They showed up a third of the time. They handed in 1 out of 2 papers. They weren't the best student. They were me, when I was going to college. Then I had non-traditional students who were either on the GI Bill or they had been out in the workforce a while. They showed up every single day. Their work was excellent. They were motivated. And so what I heard you say is there's a way to maybe have both. And you could rearrange it very differently. And you may never be motivated to go to college after you start making money that way, but you might. But then you have the resources to do that. Just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so Mark, why don't you introduce yourself and your program?
Sure, Jeff. It's an honor to be here with your crew, with your folks, and those that might be listening later on. My background, I'm pro learning, pro education. I've got undergraduates in physics and psychology, a master's in nuclear, and a PhD in artificial intelligence. But that being said, what I've done since I retired, I worked for 30 plus years at Oak Ridge National Laboratory as a research scientist. It was really more of an entrepreneur. We looked at building teams and solving problems for some of the nation's gnarliest problems. But alongside that, I'd been working for nearly 3 decades with kids as a part of the FIRST program. FIRST is a program started to inspire kids to work alongside professional engineers to design and manufacture robots. And so had been doing that. But throughout the years, really became to fall in love with trying to unlock the potential in the kids, really wanting to help them identify not a job, but a calling. And that calling means they're aligning their talents with a need that's in society and that they can generate value to be able to do that sustainably. So long story short, after I retired, I consulted for a few years. I had this dream of coming back and starting a program that would sort of disrupt education, helping to engage students earlier in thinking critically, working collaboratively, and really being innovators and lifelong learners, which meant accessing existing technology, but also doing it in a way that solved problems, very practical, real-world problems. I found myself doing that. We won a grant from the state of Tennessee as a part of an innovative high school model. They actually asked us to rethink how would you rethink or reimagine modes of learning, partnerships, the use of time, and the use of space. And with that grant, we built what is kind of a cutting-edge manufacturing facility with CNCs, very much like you might find in Ryan's business, commercial 3D printers, other things. One of the things we do as a capstone class is our students run a design and manufacturing service, and they operate under a profit-sharing model. So kids actually use lean startup. They work with customers. They solve problems. They turn around and both prototype, design, and fabricate real-world solutions. And then they deliver those to customers as a part of that. But the goal or the mission of this was to give kids really 3 options. Kids come out of our program because they understand how to solve problems collaboratively. They understand how to work with customers and deliver value. They could potentially come out of this program and start their own business. We've had a couple kids kind of do that. They could immediately go into the workforce and deliver value because they know how to solve problems and use the latest technology, or they've got a fast track into an engineering program if that's what they so choose. So we really wanted to give them multiple options. One of the programs we're working on currently is we are trying to set up a program that allows students outside of the current school network to take advantage of and work as a part of what we're doing. Right now, we offer classes through the local community college, so students get dual enrollment credit. We also run a robotics program at night, and we've taken over the years a number of homeschool students that have had interest in technology, and they've been a part of that program and get access to the technologies and to the partnerships that we have as a part of that. So that's kind of a quick summary.
So the robotics, do they participate in the capstone stuff, or is that a separate program?
That's a separate program, but I guess the thing I would say is that they do everything. If you want to think about it that way, the kids in the capstone project would. They're given a challenge every year. They go from nothing to a full-fledged. To give you an idea, these are robots that are 150 pounds. They operate autonomously as well as teleoperated, and the students do everything from the conception, CAD design, machining, fabrication, electrical, programming, powder coating, everything that you can imagine. They also work as a part of a business. We raise anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 a year to operate the program. So the students also get exposed to community engagement, volunteerism, speaking in public, interacting with sponsors. So they get that full aspect of what it would be to run a business. So it's not, they don't get quote unquote credit. Although I will tell you that over the last 3 or 4 years, Roane State has given students that participate in the robotics program at night dual enrollment credit as well. So that's another opportunity that could do that as well as potentially.
Yeah. So at CCA, we'll probably continue to think about that, because after talking to Mark and Ryan, and Ryan's on our board as well as Ray, and we've talked about this for a while as a board, and so the robotics programs that are available, through Mark's program, but there's others, that might be a good gateway to developing hit the ground running productive capabilities as a
if you need, I'd be happy to make introductions. They're all throughout the region. They start at kindergarten and always through high school, and so there's opportunities to get hands-on, collaborative working skills and working with some technologies.
Well, we'll continue to stew on this. I mean, Ryan's been an advocate for how CCA should look at this for a while, and I think there's just a lot of energy around it. So more to come.
And I will say, Jeff, one of the reasons we're doing this is this phenomenal opportunity in the trades. People used to think about manufacturing as being what the 3Ds, right, Ryan? The dirty, dark, and dangerous, right? What we're talking about now is clean, it's cutting edge, it's precision manufacturing. There's enormous demand in our local region with the nuclear renaissance of students coming through a program like this to have great careers. We've actually been pursued recently by the chief revenue officer of a company. Well, it's a network company called BTX Precision Manufacturing. They actually tell me, so students that, and very similar to what Ryan's business is, somebody that can work with the customer, they know how to set a job up, they know how to do the automation, generate the CAM, move it into production. He said, if your kids can learn that, we'll start them out at $105,000 to $120,000 a year right out of high school without any other degree. Wow. So again, we're trying to get kids to the place where they've got those technical skills. They can demonstrate them, and they're very, very much in demand and very marketable in the world.
It feels like there's a niche that these statistics just have missed. It's either a high school graduate or a college-bound person, and there's a sort of a niche of this skilled worker driven entrepreneurial thinking kid that actually is making
through programs like ours or Ryan's Connection or others. The neat thing about it in the state of Tennessee, you can basically get, if your kids would want it, 2 years paid for.
Right.
That 2 years can get you through a trade school, right? There's a number of TCATs, which are Tennessee, College of Applied Technology. You got HVAC, you've got electrical systems, you got diesel automatic. You can have so many of these things that are high demand, good paying jobs that just haven't been on most of our radar screens in the past. And those are the kind of things that are not going to be taken over by AI.
Yes.
You're going to learn how to automate and do better with some of those kind of things. And so if you take a kid that's got an entrepreneurial and innovation mindset and they learn those skills and they've got the people skills and the business chops, I mean, you can go out and set up as an independent business owner in almost any of those industries and do really, really well.
Yeah, this is particularly, this is a good fit for CCA because they come out with good presentation skills, good people skills. I mean, almost everybody who meets our students are like, pretty struck by the poise I mean, that we're a language arts.
Yeah.
That's what we believe in. And so I can see marrying that up with that entrepreneurial drive and those skills. So, and anybody, you know, for me, it was during COVID that I was like, hey, dude, I don't know if I'd think about going to college. I'm trying to get this electrician in. I'm on a waiting list, and to put a couple plugs in is $1,200. So maybe I need to rethink, you know, my encouragement to you. With that, Ray, I want you to sort of jump in, introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm facing the same Tennessee torment, I believe Jamie is. So if my voice is hard to hear, let me know. But so I'm graduated from University of Tennessee with agriculture engineering degree in undergrad, a master's degree there also in that. I worked 25 years in the machinery industry. Implements for skid steers and tractors were my what I worked on mainly. But at the end of my career, someone introduced me to Joe Salatin. And so that kind of changed my perspective on how important machinery and those areas are. And it's changed my focus away from spraying and all the machinery that I was using to the concept of allowing animals do the work for you and just managing them in rotation. So I'll be glad to talk to anyone about Joe Salatin and Polyface Farm if you want to go to his website and look that up. But he hires interns every year. And I just had a student in our Challenge 3 group at our community, CCA community, asked about farming. I said, if you're interested in wanting to farm, and he's a suburb kid, I said, you need to look at Joe Salatin's farm and apply as an internship with him. That would be the way to go. And I can get you a job in Loudoun County hauling square bales for somebody this summer. That would be the best way to break into farming right away. But the program that I've just learned about and that I don't have any personal experience with it, but other than going to visit a couple of weeks ago, was the American College of Building Arts in Charleston, South Carolina. And their story is that when Hurricane Hugo came through and destroyed a lot or damaged a lot of buildings, old buildings in Charleston, they couldn't find tradespeople to repair the buildings. So they had to go to Europe and bring in plasterers and stonecrafts and bring in carpenters and timber, people that could understand timber buildings and repair timber buildings. And so in 2005, they started this school. And so it's a little different. It is a college, but it's a college that'll teach you a trade. It's a liberal arts school. You finish with a degree, or you can stop you can get a 2-year degree, or you can do all 4 years. But 89% of their students are employed in their trade now. And I just have a brochure of theirs. They started the college. They started in a different form until 2005. Then they've been in their current form since 2005. They have not raised tuition since 2005. But it is a private school. Tuition is it's $10,000 per semester. With a one-time tool fee of about $500. But they have 153 students in the school. 70% of their students from out of state. Their average class size is 8-to-1, and the average age of the student is 25. So, the areas of concentration that they offer is architectural stone, plaster, and they said they can't get enough people in the plaster program. That's the one they're really short on. And so if you have someone that's artistic that wants to, doesn't feel like they want if you will, a normal 4-year degree, well, here's one for them, because they said anybody artistic typically does very well with plaster, because it's about making shapes and designs to decorate, like crown molding, do a lot of different forms with the plaster. But then there's architectural carpentry, timber framing, blacksmithing, and classical architecture and design. And that's the 6 programs they offer. And me and my boys and some other dads that are friends of mine, we went down and saw this school a couple of weeks ago. And what I really loved about it, the professors of this school are committed to keeping this and I say by a private school standard, this is low cost. You're talking $20,000, $22,000 a year in tuition and fees. But every summer they do an externship. They set up the students so they're working from their first summer. They get them in companies in whatever area of skill set they're learning. They get them in companies to work through the summer for that summer. And one of their statements is, nobody is bored when he is trying to make something that is beautiful or discover something that is true. And think how many times our kids tell us they're bored. And I'll speak about my own, and he's in the back. He can listen to me now. Here, say this. But nobody is bored when he is trying to make something that is beautiful or discover something that is true. So that's the kind of, I guess, mantra that I like about this school. And we're considering our boys going there, but what we've talked about them is, like you said, working in the trades for a year or two, seeing if one's interested in blacksmithing, one's interested in carpentry. And so I plan on finding local people where they can try those avenues for a year or so after they finish CC, and then we'll go to school, potentially go to the school.
Thanks, Ray. So this is fascinating. I mean, you've just heard from 4 people in the breadth of opportunity, and this is just 4 people I've stumbled across in the last 3 months, right? So there's something going on. I believe there's a movement to be autonomous, independent, and I think that's being very fueled here. There's a sense of, being in command of your own destiny. I mean, a lot of us look at, wow, I looked at my dad and said, wow, he's a great guy, but I don't think I want to be an accountant. I don't think that's the life for me. And then I joined a punk rock band, but that's a different story. So I think there's something different though in the air now that has really captivated the families and the children coming out that are starting to look at things different. And again, we've only talked to 4 people that had very diverse, ways to access the opportunity. You could have the legacy company. I'm sure there are people within our in our community at CC that probably have that thought of handing something off to their children. I love the franchise idea. We think of saving up for our kids' college education. Well, maybe that's a stake in a franchise as opposed to a school education. It makes you very careful where you bind your money, in a 529 or something like that. But some of the money we would put toward college, we might put toward them starting a franchise. And I love that idea. And I love talking to Brett. And if you get a chance to talk to Brett or Jamie, you'll hear thousands of franchise ideas. I mean, I was at Jamie's house one afternoon and he was rattling them off, and they were. It's so crazy what people can make a buck at. There's the dog poop company. There's the changing light bulbs at nursing homes and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities for somebody with the drive. So my question to all 4 panelists is, there's 2 or 3 profiles I have of the typical college-bound student. There's the high achiever, academically bent, loves school, has somewhat of a clear vision what their educational goals are. They're probably college-bound. They're probably rightfully college-bound. Then there's the non-traditional student. They might have delayed college, joined the workforce, joined the military, decided the best option was to go to college. Again, that might be a good choice for them. Then there's I can't think of anything else to do, and my parents went to college. My siblings went to college. It seems like a reasonable path. I think there's a lot of those, and I think that the stories we've heard tonight are probably compelling to them. So first of all, I'll ask 2 questions. The first question is, given those profiles, what is the profile of the person you're looking for your organization? And we'll go in reverse order. Ray, what is the kind of person, what is the kind of student that's going to succeed in what you're talking about?
Well, so in both of them, what I say was similar about the Joe Salatin process or this is people that like to work with their hands, people that like to be involved. And I think we really need to it's hard to understand this as a young person, but they need to understand that, yeah, you can learn a trade and you can do this and be very good at it. But at some point you need to transition to a mentor manager of whatever you're doing. You shouldn't plan on, hey, I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life. At some point you're going to end up needing to mentor or manage someone else in doing that. So you need leadership, managing skills also. But in this college, I mean, it's hard work. I mean, if you're going in this blacksmithing program, you're in Charleston, South Carolina, in the middle of the summer. All right, so they start in August. I shouldn't say, well, that's middle of summer. You're starting in August, and you're in front of the heat and fire of a blacksmith, and you're learning how to do that work. So it's not for someone who can't take the heat, who can't work hard at doing it. So, and then what I love about their program too is I think it can grab some students who, I don't like history. Well, if you're going to be a carpenter, they study history through the buildings and the way buildings are made. So you're studying history, but it's from the aspect of something that you love. Okay, so I think there's some students who would say, I don't want to go to college, that might be enticed by this program because if they are interested in carpentry or blacksmithing or stoneworking or something else, because it focuses all their studies, and then the language, talking about language arts, they study Spanish. You do 2 years of Spanish in this program. And but it focuses those liberal arts on the topic that they're studying and that they love.
That's great.
And hopefully they will.
Okay, Mark, what kind of student succeeds?
I'm actually looking for all of those. So as we set the program up, because students work collaboratively in this environment, I teach them lean and agile skills, which are team-based problem solving. They work with real customers on real world problems. One of the things I'm trying to do is I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Dan Pink. He wrote a book called Drive. He said it's surprising science behind what truly motivates us. And what he tried to tap into was intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic motivation of, money or fame or other things, but it's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And I think we can all identify with that, particularly with calling. And so what we try to do, Jeff, through this program is to help connect what you're learning as relevant skills as part of a mastery. So it's not, if you look at the information pyramid, data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, we're trying to get the kids out of the data and information and understanding when to do things, why to do them, and when you shouldn't do them, to think that way technically. So they're developing mastery, but they're also developing agency in what they learn and how they apply it. And then they're hopefully learning about purpose. What they're doing has a real intended purpose and application, not just making money. And so as a result of that, we're looking for those kids that want to go on to college. And this preps them with a foundation. To give you a data point, one of the young ladies that came out of our program, she was at MIT. She finished 2 years there. She did an internship at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and her mentor, who was the head of disruptive manufacturing, said, "Hey, Alex, where did you learn all this stuff?" Expecting the answer was going to be MIT. And she said, "No, let me show you." And so he came out one night to kind of kick around with the kids, learned about our philosophy, what we were trying to do, our whole approach to innovation and continual learning and continual improvement. And at the end of the night, he said, "Mark, your kids are 4 to 5 years ahead of anybody else that we've seen." And what he meant by that is the opportunities the kids had were you typically wouldn't see until graduate school or maybe your senior year capstone. And so we're trying to get that into the hands of students sooner. And so we're giving them a solid foundation. But then we've also got those kids that, they're not really sure what they want to do. And so the diversity of what we're doing allows them to sample a lot of different things. There's an artistic edge, there's a CAD edge, there's a entrepreneurial edge, there's digital media, there's all kinds of things. There's working with people. And so working as part of a team and in a multi-skilled interdisciplinary team, it gives them a way to put their toes in the water and try a lot of different things, right? And some of the best things you can do is to figure out you don't like something by doing it. before you go and invest a lot of money and other things like that. And then the other is we're hopefully getting those kids early on that maybe just would have gone to college because everybody else did it, or we're trying to connect them to something intrinsically that aligns with a purpose beyond themselves. And so sometimes they discover that as a part of it. They understand who they are, they understand their gifts and their curiosities, and we actually plug them into something that is fruitful and beneficial because they get this, cyclical, learn it, apply it, try it, prove it, perfect it kind of a mentality to persist in doing hard things, and that's going to benefit them no matter what. So I'm really looking for all of those students. I think we've got something for them in the kind of programs that we're doing. We're definitely going to set them up with real world in demand skills that they can leverage. Give you another practical thing. We've had students, Jeff, that are learning the skills here. They want to go on to college, but they're actually getting a job in a machine shop based on what they learned in the skills here. And they're making way more money that you're going to do flipping burgers or anything else. Plus, you're working in a trade, and so they're able to take that and apply it and offset some of the costs so that it's not crippling, and they don't have to take out huge debt. So it gives them another set of tools, another set of options too.
I love that. And you said something. I mean, when we first talked, you said something that struck me about you want them to be productive, hitting the ground running. And I think at CCA we do that in our senior thesis, but we're thinking in terms of college. We know that when you go through your senior thesis, man, you're going to walk through the first 2 years of any writing class and research class you have. But we haven't thought through that experience for somebody who might not be going to college and the type of experience they need to be hitting the ground running.
And then the other data point I'll give you with that too, James, is we're also teaching real world project management. So I'm trained in Lean and Agile. Students that come out of our program are registered Scrum Masters and registered product owners. I've had a couple of students say that they actually got jobs because they knew how to run projects in a way that was focused on prioritization, value delivery, and adaptive planning. And so even some of those practical real world skills are beneficial no matter where you find yourself.
Great. So me and Jamie had talked when he was explaining his franchise business to me, and it's like there's working for a franchise and there's owning a franchise, and the intrinsic motivation is very different. Like if I worked and all my job was changing light bulbs, I'd probably go nuts. But if I owned the company and was doing that, it's a very different animal. So Brett and Jamie, I'll let either one of you take this. What kind of person's going to succeed? What kind of student?
Brett, I'll take this one. Try to cough my way through it. Actually, I want to take a sidebar real quick and just say that I really like what both Ray and Mark had to say about the real world experience. There was a pretty significant report that came out last year that employers are finding that people with 4-year degrees are unemployable. So this idea of going straight from high school to college, some of those groups you talked about, well, my parents went, so I guess I'll go. Well, that kid doesn't have enough real world experience to come out of college and go to work and add any kind of value. And employers are having to reject, and they're hiring people and then firing them within the first year. It's gotten big enough that they're doing studies on what in the world is going on here. So I just want to highlight this idea that taking a gap year and making sure that young adult gets some time in the real working world, that's actually going to be seen as a net positive, not as an interruption to a academic career. Because the employers are actually having some deep concerns about what's coming out of our colleges. And the other thing I'll say is this idea of, I know what I want to be when I grow up, so I'm going to take the college course that'll get me that job. I sent my son off to college. He did a 4-year nursing degree. He was the first male to graduate from their program, went straight into day shift, which is a bit of an achievement, and quit his job within 2 years because he hated it. And so the idea of getting out into the field, putting some work in, finding out, do I even like it before you spend the money and the time is really important.
Go ahead, Brett.
And if I could just add one thing, and it's just a comment on how you introduced this topic of conversation, Jeff. You commented that there might be high schoolers who are just driven and they're the achievers, and going to college is maybe probably the best route for them. I would suggest that I was very much that way. I knew from an early age that I wanted to go to Duke University, got straight A's, was constantly thinking about what extracurriculars I could attend to, have the best chance to put on resumes and write college essays about, and studied for the SAT, and I got into Duke. But if anybody had ever stopped to ask me, what if instead of spending $150,000 to $200,000 for you to go to Duke, we redirected that money and set you up in a business where in 4 years, when all of your friends are graduating with all the theoretical knowledge that Jamie was talking about, and you have 4 years of real world in the trenches, business skill development, and oh, by the way, you have a high likelihood of actually making more money 4 years from now than they will taking their first job out of college. Would that interest you? And it certainly would have made me at least stop and pause. Now, I love Duke basketball enough. I still might have gone to Duke anyway. But the point is, it might be at least worth asking your kids, because I think the answer to your question, Jeff, is there is no one size fits all that's appropriate for business in general or franchises businesses in particular. It's all about finding the right opportunity. But I think the world of kids that business ownership is for is way bigger than we might think. It just requires having a why that's a little bit bigger than the traditional, I'm just going to follow the traditional path.
Well, I'm a little more, I'm maybe a little more, even more aggressive than what you said, talking to my kid, if you don't really know what you want to do, I don't know if I want to send you right now to college. I don't know if that's a great idea at all. So, and I think it's totally taking that step back, that gap year or whatever. But I think as parents, it's a little more than just asking them. It's like, do we think this kid knows do we think they have enough direction on this choice? So, Ryan, who succeeds in your business?
Well, in our shop right now,
we had a conversation about people came to you, and the way you interviewed people, I thought was interesting. But go ahead.
Oh boy, I don't remember what I said about that, but so one of our most successful young men, he's under 30, maybe he just turned 30, but he's got 3 kids now. He's married, got his own house. But he spent his first 2 years doodling around over at UT. And so he was telling us after, we hired him and everything, that he went to UT and he, just by his own admission, was a terrible student. He cared more about partying and just kind of goofing around. And he was a smart guy, but didn't have the big picture like Mark was talking about. Didn't know why he was doing what he was doing. I forget even what he was studying, but he didn't make it all 4 years. He dropped out and then realized he needed to figure this thing out. And I forget what caused him to go to a tech school, but he went to it, paid for a tech school. I think that was a couple of years, and that helped him figure out what he wanted to do. He liked working with his hands and building and creating. But then he, about a year after tech school, he found our shop, and he's been thriving since. He loves the job. It fits him perfect. He loves everything about it. And it's been financially rewarding for him too. But he was saying that in the tech school, we taught him more in like the first 6 months than he would have learned than he did learn in the tech school. So he paid for the tech school, and then if he had found our shop and we would have hired him, at first, then he would have been that much farther ahead. But one thing, a person that succeeds in our kind of field, I guess, my kind of shop, would be someone who probably didn't go to college specifically, because somebody who went to college, at least my experience, number one, they feel like they know everything already, so they're not teachable. So another thing is they usually have a lot of debt, and so they have a super high expectations and needs of what they need to get paid right out of the gate. And since they're not very useful, we can't pay them that much because we have to train them.
Yeah.
And in our particular shop, we're not a production shop, so we're not doing the same thing over and over. Everything is different. Everything is new and fresh. And this is one of the reasons why I was so blown away. I saw Mark, his shop, and what he's doing. And when I saw it, I was totally blown away, because these guys are coming out of his place like ready to provide value right out of high school. And that was mind blowing. What he's doing is really amazing. But anyway, I just talked to. I was having my car in the body shop, and the guy over there told me. He said this was Caliber Collision, and they have all these different, chain. It's a chain everywhere. Okay. He said they are like basically begging people to come and work in a body shop. Now, it's working with your hands. It's probably hard work, but they will train you. You don't have to go to tech school. They're the same situation. They're just looking for someone who has the drive, who has the aptitude, the hands, the brain that can put the pieces together, and they will teach you this skill. You don't have to pay for the 2-year tech school to do this. They'll pay you on the job to do it. And this is a marketable skill that you could take. I mean, every trade I know is looking for good employees, and they can't find them. It's the same everywhere. So anyway, that's.
Well, we're running a little late, but I want to keep the conversation going. If people have 15 more minutes, I'd appreciate you sticking around. We got started just slightly late. So I want to ask the panel one more question. And it was very interesting what Ryan said, that, people coming out of college, they could be in for a rude awakening because of their needs and expectations. And maybe it's better to, acclimate them to reality about what it is to succeed before they get there. Again, they might go at some point, but this idea of only launching them when they're ready, in the direction that they're ready, I believe is important. So there's a lot of, we're in a moment where we're having to, entertain a different paradigm with this. 10 years ago, no one would have had this conversation. College was the way to go. You wanted to position your child any way they could. You wanted to save for that. It's a different conversation right now. It's a different paradigm that we're having to entertain. So there's a lot of trepidation on behalf of people like me who come from everyone went to college land. And I'm sure that's a lot of people at CCA. So what is your advice to the parent who is fearful in considering a different path than the track that they went, even though they might have sniffed some of the same risk we talked about? They still might be fearful of encouraging this too much. What is your advice to them? And we'll sort of go in reverse order back. So I guess we're going to start with you, Ryan.
Well, for me, since my dad didn't go to college, he's the way his mind works, he was never going to go to college. But he's a problem solver, and he's an entrepreneurial kind of guy. And then I kind of got blessed by kind of falling into it myself. So I didn't go to college. So on my side, it's like I have to struggle to find the value in college. So it's the other side of the thing. But I do see the value in college as far as you were saying, education is an end in itself. It is a good. And so I think some things I heard recently was about asking your student, what is the good life? Define the good life. Is it lots of money? Is it having a purpose? Is it helping others? You know, you could get a 4-year degree or whatever and go into social work. And from what I understand, there's not a lot of money there. But does that matter to you? Is it about helping others? You know, so having a vision of what are you really trying to accomplish? And mapping that out. What is the good life? How do you define that? And that may take you into college and university, or it may take you on another route altogether.
So what I'm hearing you say, the question for the parent is, again, they have to accept that education is a end in itself. And when they ask the question to their child, what is the good life? They can't have an assumption about what that really should be. And so great question to ask. Brett, Jamie, the fearful parent, what are you going to tell them?
So in Proverbs 22, it says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. Jeff, you're in the Messianic Hebrew side of things. If you actually look at the Hebrew on this, it's actually referring to the way the child should go. Like, what is their bent? What is their orientation? What are their giftings and their propensities? And I think that we typically interpret that as, well, I know what's best for you, and so this is what you should do. You should get a college degree because that's going to set you up for life. But that's more of a conveyor belt. That's a one-size-fits-all mentality, and the world has changed. And you've heard Ryan just talk about it. Whatever they're teaching in the school right now, we used to joke that it was 4 years behind. It's more like 10 years behind now. Moore's law and technology and artificial intelligence and robotics, the world of work is reshaping about every 6 months right now. So whatever they're teaching you in college is almost completely irrelevant for most professions. So unless you're going into your child is going into a specific program where that field of knowledge just doesn't shift frequently, it's really it's a gamble. Right? We now have YouTube University available to all of us. Studying AI prompts on YouTube University is probably better than your average 4-year information technology degree right now, just because of the way everything is shifting and changing. And so, when I was growing up, my mom was plugging wires on the switchboard. She worked for Southern Bell, and in order to complete the pair, you'd have to change it out when it got loaded up. It didn't matter how good she was at her job. That job is gone. The technology shifted. The workplace got reshaped. And a lot of the jobs that we saw 10 years ago, they'll be gone in 5 years. And so it's time to let outdated thinking go while still holding firm to timeless principles, like train up a child in the way they should go. Parents should study their kids and as early as possible, set them in a path of walking in those giftings and in that direction, not just head knowledge, but actual muscle memory.
Yeah, and I think that honest appraisal really of college, as opposed to just the fearful, that's the road my father was on, that's the road on. It seems the safest road to take. When we're honestly appraise it, what you said isn't new. It's been that way for 20 years, that the theoretic education you get in college is not what they're doing in the real world, and it's when you get in the real world at your job that you really start learning how to do it. That's not new, and we just got to be honest about that. Why not short circuit that route and find creative ways to do it? Because again, I believe that the way we educate has changed. What you just said, there's a world of information that could teach us at our fingertips. So Mark, what do you say to the fearful parent?
Fear not, for I am with you. Right? That's what we're told. A couple of things. First thing I would encourage parents to do, if you're not already doing it, is help your kids take back their minds and not be taken over by digital media. Right now, the attention economy is stealing the attention of our kids and their ability to pay attention. Historically, what's happened, unfortunately, technology is there. You've got the world in their pocket, but if they don't know how to master their own minds and not be taken captive by the technology, no matter what we do with them or for them, they're going to become a slave to that. So help them to take back their mind, their attention, to set goals. A couple of other things, encourage them in that. I completely agree that education is an end to themselves, but it never stops. They got to be lifelong learners, right? We're finite beings. God is infinite. What He's given us is immense. And so being curious and always looking and learning and applying that is something that's going to bode well no matter what they do. The other part of that, there's a great book written recently, say, be so good they can't ignore you. So whatever they put their hand to, do it with excellence. And you can jump the S curve. You don't have to stick with something forever. I would encourage them to be interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, right? To be able to do those kind of skills. If you're looking at a college program, I just spent this afternoon learning about a brand new program they're setting up here in our own backyard at the University of Tennessee at the College of Emerging Studies. It is a one-of-a-kind program. The students can create their own pathway in the areas of AI, automation, cybersecurity, and so all of the techniques that we're talking about. But they're also working closely with local industry partners to give them real-world connections. So if you do have a kid that's got that bent, and it's connected to the Haslam Business School and the School of Entrepreneurial Development, so it kind of hits multiple things here, but again, knowing your student, knowing your kid, knowing their propensities, and then the other thing is if you set them off or encourage them to pursue one of these trade routes, it's going to be beneficial. They can always go back to college later on, right? So don't feel like you're making a mistake, encouraging them to do that in a career or job that delivers value, and they find that they don't want to do it. There's options later on. So we continue to learn and adapt. So, don't be afraid of that. Help them find their calling and their purpose, right? And then grow in that direction.
I think that's great that you can go to college. You can always go to college. And I can tell you my experience is the ones that go when they're ready are better students anyway. And let that be the weeding out process.
I mean, I finished my doctorate degree when I had 3 kids under 3, right? Just because education was so. Yeah, I don't encourage you to do that, but you can do a lot. Yeah.
Ray, what do you say to the fearful parent?
Listen to take a 7-hour drive like I did yesterday, and listen to the Screw Tape Letters, C.S. Lewis. And the phrase that caught me about that was that God wants us to live in the present. And He wants us to live thinking about eternity. He doesn't want us to dwell on history, what we've done wrong, and He doesn't want us to dwell on the future. You think about the lily, consider the lily of the field, right? He tells us to consider the lily of the field. He's going to take care of us. So that would be my message to them is your kid's decision in the present that's the really concern you should have, as are they considering eternity in their decisions?
Yes,
that's what you really want to worry about. And then my experience with my education is I have an engineering degree, but my first job was in product support. It wasn't directly in my degree, but then through my 25-year career, I had like 5 different jobs, and only one time did I have the title of engineer. I negotiated contracts. I did a lot of different roles. And so this concept to think that we're asking a 17, 15 to 18-year-old, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I'm never going to ask my kids that, because I didn't do the same thing the rest of my life from the time I was 18. So I think that's sometimes a big burden to put on a kid's mind, that they have to make up their mind, that they have to decide what they want to do the rest of their life. Hey, find something you enjoy that you can put your heart into, that that God would be proud you're doing it, and go do that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to respect everyone's time. Thank you for joining. We'll probably revisit this topic at some point in the future. Again, both Ray and Ryan are on our board, and we'll continue to have this conversation as a board of what do we do as CCA to maybe develop an opportunity that's a little different than what we have right now. I will tell you, the semester is closing, but it's also going to be opening again in May. We're going to be re-registering for the next school year. There's a lot of changes at CCA, all for the good. We're going to be introducing a new sort of pathway. We're calling it the choice pathway. We are also in partnership with Carson Newman, and there's going to be a lot of complementary courses where students who are in right now Challenge 3 would be able to fulfill DE credit through Carson Newman by doing their Challenge 3 work, and still get the Tennessee dual enrollment grant. So this is going to be a huge program. There's also a summer scole we're doing. So there's just a lot going on at CCA. We're going to be getting back into testing. We lost our testing service a couple years ago. They stopped doing what they did, and we're trying to figure out a way to do what they did in terms of offering online and on-site testing. So we're building that into the 2025-26 school year. And so just look for communication on that. And we appreciate the time you spent with us tonight. If you have any questions, I will probably send everybody's contact information in case they want to get a hold of you guys. And I was looking at the comments. So I will include that in the follow-up email, and we will make this recording available. I've had a lot of people, over the week say, hey, I can't make it, but can you make sure there's a recording? So we'll make sure we have access to that. Thank you again, and have a good night.